going to throw a prediction out there that the domain industry should love, but I'm going to probably get a lot of hate and
you're going to get a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
We like feedback. Feedback's good.
So everything is cyclical. Everything in life, everything in business, everything in politics, economics, history, everything is cyclical. Everything repeats. And I predict that in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, maybe shorter than that, maybe a much nearer term than that, but let's say 3 to 5 years to be conservative, we're going to see a major rebound in exact match domain names. And what I will say is I'm already seeing signs of a rebound in the viability and advantage of exact match keyword domain names in search. That same advantage that I was just saying has been sort of disqualified or devalued by most of the search and marketing community, as well as domain investors. Over the last few years, I'm starting to see, I can't talk about exact case studies or examples, but I can say that it's based on some of our top customers who are considered to be some of the top SEOs in the world. And they are seeing a almost clear pickup in the advantage of these exact match domain names. And there's a lot of reasons for it, which I haven't studied enough to really go into it in depth yet, but I hope to in the next few months. But I'm quite sure, without being certain, but quite sure that there is some major changes coming to Google's search algorithm that, despite all of their shouting from the rooftops that they want to kill the URL and all the bullshit that you read about, there are very clear advantages which are going to play to the advantage of exact match domain name holders. And we are going to see SEO benefits increase from exact match domains over the coming years, if not
yeah.
less.
I couldn't agree more. I think I was reading an article the other day about Google wanting to remove the URL completely from their Chrome browser, making the URL pretty much not visible, which would, change, how customers perceive, but there still has to be a way to recognize trust of the brand that you're working with. So the URL is definitely the easiest place to do that. But yeah, I think the domain industry, I think there is a premium. There was a nice bubble that we rode up for a couple of years. I think right now we're going through a season that if you don't own the best names, you're hurting right now. Your values are hurting, your offers are hurting, the regularity of both are hurting, and it's tough to figure out, do I keep this one? Do I sell this one for more? Is this the last offer I'm going to get on this name? I think the domain name is the easiest way to establish a quality brand. Like, it's the first decision a brand has to make when they come online, right? And if they make a right decision, everything that Drew and we just touched on about customer behavior is never going to go away. Never will it go away. So if you take the right approach, you can capitalize on that aspect of consumer behavior. But if you don't, or you don't own a name in that space, you're obscure. People won't know you. I mean, imagine there being 10 to 100 times the amount of competitors in your space today, in 100 years than there are today. 10 to 100 times your competitors. That means there's going to have to be some way that the companies that are winning bring in permanent differentiation. And that typically is done through brand, through location, through a patent, through something that can be forever and always your asset. And domain names, I think, will be that over time, because we're just going to run out of options. There's only going to be so many, variation.
Well undervalued and well underappreciated.
Yeah. And when brands are already recognizing this, and I think this is why you're starting to see a comeback already. They're just understanding the value of, hey, we could go in and drop 50, 100, $1 million.
That's not the reason. So the reason is directly correlated to Google And the reason, so there's two sides to this coin. So one is, why does Google want to kill the URL in the first place? And the reason is because Google wants to be the gatekeeper, just like Facebook wants to be the gatekeeper, just like every other third-party intermediary wants to be the gatekeeper of traffic, because traffic is the currency of the internet. And what's the precursor to traffic? Trust. So ultimately, trust is the currency of the internet. And so Google wants to kill the URL because companies, people, anybody who wants to cut them out, who wants to establish their own direct link to the consumer, to their audience, to whoever it is that they want to use the internet to connect with, the best way, the only way to do that without entrusting your brand, your message, your traffic, your data, and everything else to a third party is owning your bestversion.com domain name. It is the only single way in today's world to have a direct control over your single point of contact with your consumer and your audience. So that is why Google wants to kill the URL, because they want all the traffic to come through Google. Naturally, that's inherent, particularly in any a beast like Google. So, however, all of that being said, Google needs to do what they set out to do from the beginning, which is provide meaningful semantic search to customers to provide them what they're looking for. And ultimately, one of the best ways of doing that is parsing out what they can from the URL. And so Google's been, sort of a big believer in these new GTLDs. They've been supporting it. They've launched some of their own. And ultimately, the only way to make new GTLDs work is to parse out the keyword to the right of the dot. And so even though they say right now they're not taking the left and what's to the right of the dot and, enjoining them to establish exactly what is intended by that URL, the evidence suggests otherwise. And as we're seeing in .net, .org, and .com, exact match domain names, 2 words, 3 words, there is an increasing advantage that's seemingly coming about. And so who knows? We'll see where it goes. But there's a whole bunch of different reasons, all having to do with Google.